everyone. It's Lex, and it's time for part 2 of our Legend Cast interview with Jaret Reddick of Bowling for Soup. Hour 1 was awesome. We got the intro, got kind of the skinny on what's going on with Jaret and Bowling for Soup and all the things he's involved in. We know now that he's a family man. We now know that he is probably going to do 100 different things because that's just what he's wired to do. And we also know that he is going nowhere anytime soon except on your TV, on your phone, in your ears. I mean, the guy is just a prolific worker if it has anything to do with media. We also, and I love this section of the podcast because it's not something I've ever done before, but we became friends during this part of the podcast. We had a nice conversation about it after it was over, and it was kind of cool to have a guy of Jaret's background and somebody who's pretty much known all over the world to say, dude, I think we became friends during this podcast. There's so many things we're both into and so many things that, we see eye to eye on. I feel like we're going to be friends for life. And that's kind of how I felt. I just didn't want to say it because, a rock star can always go, yeah, no. But, of course, he said it first. So he put himself out there, and I was quick to agree that Jaret and I did become friends during this next hour here. It was very cool. But what you're going to hear in this 3-part podcast is a guy who really has a zest together. And in spite of all the stuff he's done musically and something he could stake his claim on and do the rest of his life and make money and probably be happy, you're going to hear a guy who is just not going to stop there. There are so many different things he wants to do. So we hope you enjoy this next couple hours coming up. This is part 2, and you're going to hear a lot about Jaret Reddick, Bowling for Soup, his family, his friends, what makes him tick, and, of course, a friendship being made as we get into part 2 of the Legend Cast with Jaret Reddick. And then there's the new Lex and Terry podcast. We're getting ready to drop a free one here pretty soon.
Nice.
And one of the things that's missing from us was kind of government made, and that is what Lex and Terry did in the beginning. A lot of the crazy stuff we did, thanks to Justin and Janet, we couldn't do anymore.
Yeah.
You can't call people up on the phone anymore. Without saying, you're being recorded and all this stuff on government radio, elsewhere.
Yeah, you can kind of do whatever you want to
do. So there's, we listed dozens and dozens of things we don't do anymore.
Yeah. The thing that made you
Yeah, definitely a big piece of our fiber that we're going to, do along with some other things that we never did as ideas because we couldn't. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be something we debut next year as a free podcast. Because right now our Sudden Death is a subscription podcast.
Right.
And it's P1 all the way. I mean, it's inside stuff. You got to be the consummate Lex and Terry fan to enjoy that podcast. This one will be much more appealing to when it gets marketed to people coming to the Lex and Terry brand that didn't get to experience it, or even better, out of the 40 or 50 cities that we've been on and off over the last 20 years, we have 12 markets we went number 1 in and then got taken off the air for one reason or another.
Yes, you gotta re-grab those people. Yeah, those people are all listening to podcasts now. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, we get with the right place and get marketed. We could have a bazillion downloads. People that, have had to desert the Lex and Terry brand. So we're excited about that. I mean, that's just the world we live in now, and like you guys, I'm sure there's things you've had to leave by the wayside through labels or people you're dealing with where, they're instructing you to do something that you in your hearts probably think, we should keep doing. Or yeah. I mean, I'll tell you something about me that a lot of people don't know, and that is I am a sucker for the 3-minute power pop song.
Oh yeah,
which is like your specialty.
That's my that's my thing. Is that formula and that I mean, I started out as a songwriter that I basically started writing songs because nobody else in my band would, and I just basically wrote these punk rock songs that I didn't have any sort of structure to them or anything like that.
The best ones.
I didn't write them, about anything from my heart. And over the course of the years, I've started writing about things, about my personal stuff and about just real life and obviously stuff to just make people laugh. But yeah, you're right, man. I love verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, done.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my 1985 definitely in my top 5. All the Small Things.
That's Blink-182. Yeah.
My number one
That's
favorite
a good one.
Power pop song.
Yeah.
God, I'm going blank right now.
There's so many good ones like that, though. Like,
Raspberries Go All the Way.
Oh wow, yeah.
Just that 3-minute great rock song that, like you said,
meat and potatoes.
Yeah, meat and potatoes, and that melodic guitar. It's just God. What's the name of the band? It's Fireside, I think is.
I don't know that band.
No, that might be the name of the song. Shit, I'll find it here when we take a break.
Okay.
But, I heard that one day on my Discovery thing that Spotify does.
Yeah.
Yeah, they give you 30 songs a week that are kind of in line of stuff you listen to, and it's like that song came on, I'm like, yes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I love stuff like that, Open My Eyes, the Nas, which is Todd Rundgren before he was Todd Rundgren. Yeah.
Dude, I saw Todd Rundgren. I saw the very first show when he was in the Cars for a little while.
Oh, wow.
They did a private party.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, they were called the New Cars.
Yeah.
And I went to a private party in like a sound studio and like last minute invite and just got to see the Cars play with Todd Rundgren. It was crazy.
No, people have no idea what a fucking genius he is.
Yeah, that dude's a maniac.
He used to frustrate the shit out of me along with David Bowie because their range of imagination is so huge that you don't get what you got in the last record that you were so waiting for. You get something totally different because they're capable of doing it.
As an adult, I guess I was like 40. David Bowie's been gone, what, like 2 years?
Yeah.
So I guess I was like 44-year-old man. And I remember when he passed away and you would start hearing some of the songs. I literally didn't know that some of those songs were him.
Right.
I mean, I knew the songs, but I was just like, I had no idea that was David Bowie.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, especially on those early records. And I didn't know he wrote till a couple years ago, All the Young Dudes.
Me either. That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just gave it away. Mm-hmm. He heard the band and went, this would sound better with you than me here.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's a hit song, Ian.
Yeah, take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those, though. It's like, when you like when I was a kid and, I got to be like in college or whatever and I discovered all the songs that were Beatles songs that I didn't know were the Beatles. Mm-hmm. It's funny how that happens, Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of, that whole Eagles, Jackson Brown, Linda Ronstadt thing. It's like you start finding out who wrote what, because they all sat around and wrote songs together. I had no idea Take It Easy was written by Jackson Brown.
Yeah, I had no idea either.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what my favorite version of that is if you figure out all of the hit songs that Willie Nelson wrote, it will blow your mind.
I know.
It's crazy.
Yeah. One of the most prolific songwriters of our time.
Ever. I mean, it's just crazy, how many of those songs that he wrote and that didn't perform. I mean, seriously, if the listener should Google that just like how many songs that he's written. It will literally just freak you out.
Yeah, and the guys in the background, like the Bernie Taupins, who doesn't get talked about, but there are no Elton John songs if that dude's not around.
No, he tried to do one album without him, and it was terrible.
Yeah, beyond terrible. Actually, it was just perfect chemistry.
Yep, they that's just something that those two. So Bernie's the lyricist for Elton John.
Yeah,
and it's just one of those things where you don't really think about that whole thing, and to me, it's such an interesting way to write songs anyway. To like just be given this okay, here's this poem, or whatever, here's these lyrics I wrote, now go make it a melody and stuff, like, as a songwriter, that's weird to me. But you know what?
But who cares?
It freaking works.
As long as it comes out like it does.
Yeah.
I really don't give a shit how it gets put together.
Same.
Elton John shouldn't feel bad.
No.
That he's grabbing somebody's lyrics and constructing greatness with it. It's it doesn't make me think any less of him, because the fact they need each other
exactly
is even cooler to me.
I think it's the coolest thing. Yeah, and just the fact that they have so many. The fact that he has 3 greatest hits albums. That's nutty.
Yeah, with different shit on it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, they're all based upon different years. So there's just 3. He's got so many hits that it takes 3 albums to put them on there.
Yeah, I got Tumbleweed Connection on vinyl, and I had it on in the apartment one day, and Lisa was like, "Who's that?" And I went, "It's Elton John." She went, "No way."
Right, yeah.
I went, "No, this is what he was in 1970. This is what he was." And then she's like, "Wow."
Flamboyant rock star.
Yeah.
Just chicks loved him. He was married just to a girl.
Yeah.
I mean, just a completely different world. And he, and you know what? He's managed to reinvent himself several times to go out of to go keep in tune with the times. Because it's like, I remember like being in junior high, and I didn't know any of like the past stuff or whatever, but I loved that song, "Sad Songs," and
So you had never heard "Madman Across the Water" or "Yellow Brick Road" or
not until high school. I mean, I was still like, I'm still standing and that kind of stuff. And then once I heard, actually, here's a great story of how I got into so many different things. Is when I started figuring out that I was listening to cover songs. So Flotsam and Jetsam, the rock band, did a version of "Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting."
I actually worked that record.
Did you?
Yeah.
So "Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting," and I was in a metal band called Terminal Seasons, and we did a cover of that cover of a cover. I had no idea it was an Elton John song.
Yeah.
No idea. When I found that out, I bought an Elton John greatest hits record with that on there, and I was in love. But like, it goes back to like, I didn't know that "Helter Skelter" by Motley Crue was a cover. I didn't know that "Radar Love" by White Lightning was a cover. It's funny how that stuff. And Thunder, "Gimme Shelter." My daughter had it on in the car. I was taking her to ride her horse, and I said, whose version of this song is this? And my daughter goes, "Theirs." and I went, "No, honey." Was that Cinderella?
No, it was Thunder was the name of the band.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so I said, "Check this out." So I got "Gimme Shelter" by the Stones.
Oh, okay, that "Give Me Shelter."
Yeah, and she just went, "Oh, this is better."
Oh, she likes it.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So of course it's better. It's the fucking Stones.
There you go.
She she definitely had this bias towards Rolling Stones. I don't know where it came from. Probably her mother, who hated "I Love the Rolling Stones."
Right.
And she was riding horses and stuff, so I gave her "Wild Horses." And
that's a great record.
And from that point on, she now has the complete library all over her phone. She's like a Stones addict. My work is done.
So I'm not a Stones guy. I'm a Beatles guy.
See, I'm a Stones guy all the way.
And is that? Do you think it's like that? Where like remember the old thing where you can either love Elvis or you can love the Beatles, but you can't love both.
I can love both.
Yeah,
I can. Yeah.
I do not love Elvis. I
don't like Elvis at all.
Okay, I don't either.
Yeah, I'm not an Elvis fan, but I understand why people love him.
100%. If you go back and watch some of those first videos of him and know the time and all of that, man, it's just the guy's maybe one of the most brilliant performers ever.
Without a doubt. I mean, he was by himself, too. I mean, there was nobody like him. Everything he was doing was groundbreaking, was on his own. I mean, he didn't know what people were going to think.
No.
You know, he just went and did his thing, and it was boom.
It was almost like everything that everybody would tell him not to do, he would just do it. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we don't like his hair being that long, which is funny because his hair wasn't long.
Yeah, wasn't long at all.
And we don't like him shaking his hips, and we don't like him thrusting his pelvis, and, you know, all of this stuff. And so he just made it his act.
Yeah, I wish, I don't know what happened to him to, like, send him into, like, the bluesy, churchy stuff he was doing, you know. I guess he was having some sort of inner soul problem or something. I don't know, but
he had mom issues, right? Like he was like real, and like his mom had like a big grasp over him, and when she was very religious,
and when she died, you know, it like fucked him up and all this stuff. But I got to tell you, man, if he would have kept going on the course, the rock and roll course, God knows what we'd be dealing with right now, you know, music wise. Can
you imagine, like, during the heyday of that time, like, what was going on backstage at those shows? Like, I mean, oh, you can imagine. Yeah, that's right. We can, can't we?
We can.
Yeah, because
we can. I mean, he had, in the end, you know, I saw this documentary on him. I saw, you know, his whole life was to wake up at the middle of the day, you know, take whatever he had to take to get right, go to the venue, do his thing, then would get taken right back to wherever he was staying. I mean, that was his whole life. He really didn't go do things.
Right. Well,
you know, for years. You know, the colonel just had total control of his life and everything. And, you know, that's where things went off the rails for him. You know, he went from having interaction with everybody to seclusion and gone. And, you know, I remember my mom talking about it, you know, how fucking weird he become. That's actually the terminology she used, you know, because we swore in our house.
He's fucking weird.
Yeah, and she goes, yeah, he's just gotten fucking weird, honey. You know, and I'm like, yeah, he has. You know, I said I don't really listen to him anymore anyway. She's like, I know, I hear all the shit you're listening to upstairs.
Right.
You know, I'm upstairs listening to like Aerosmith Rocks and Alice Cooper Killer and you know, Black Sabbath. I mean, you know, just one thing after I couldn't spend enough money on music. You know, when I moved to Florida, and that's pretty much all I had. I didn't have friends yet and everything, so any money I made, I was putting towards records. It's like I bought Steely Dan Asia.
Yeah. At that time,
and I remember her coming up and going, "Now I like this."
Now I know Pittsburgh is a very musical town now, but back then it had to have been quite a culture shock because Florida has always been. I mean, like it's so diverse. There's music everywhere there.
Well, I mean, I moved right into the Southern Rock explosion. I mean, it was Allman Brothers and Hatchet and Skinner and 38 Special, and you know, even you know Ronnie's brother Johnny, you know, who sings for Skinner now. He had his own band, and you know, Blackfoot or Ricky Medlock, you know, was all those things were exploding. You know, like probably the hottest bed of music in the world at that time. You know, there's like 7 or 8 charting bands that lived on the west side of town. You know, half the Allman Brothers are from Jacksonville.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only ones that weren't were, you know, Greg and Dwayne before he died. You know, everybody else was basically a Jacksonville product.
That's funny how that happens. Like, how cities do that. So obviously everybody knows about the Seattle thing, and everybody knows about the New York thing with the bands, and then down here saying Jacksonville, like the people might not know that we have a Dallas one that happened, where in the 90s where like the Nixons and Trippin' Daisy and obviously it wasn't as huge, but there are these little pockets where the Toadies did I say
Toadies? Yeah.
I mean, all these bands got deals. Bob Goblin, Hagfish, like all of these bands just got deals, like right at the same time.
Well, Nora Jones is from here too.
Nora Jones. Gary went to college with her, and my drummer, and he says he used to walk in the dorms, and he'd see this kind of cute little girl playing piano over there, and he'd always want to talk to her. Never did. Nora Jones.
She came on the show. I don't know how it happened, but she was just leaving high school, and I don't know if she just got signed or whatever, but she was a huge Lex and Terry fan.
No kidding.
And she wanted to meet us, so she arranged it through the record guy, through our program director, and she came in, and we had her on the show and played some of her stuff, and we were like, oh my God, you're extremely talented.
Yeah.
We were like, good luck. With your career, I mean, and I remember she was beautiful. She was sweet. She loved the show. That didn't hurt.
Nope.
And when she left, we were just like, that's a big star.
Yeah.
That's a star. Right.
Yeah.
And she's sweet as can be. And from what I understand, still is, so.
Everybody that I know that comes in contact with her certainly says that she is. So.
Yeah. I mean, she has a couple records that have come out on Spotify that I just instantly download. They're great to listen to while you're like hanging out on Sunday morning or whatever. She's like my vibe.
Yeah.
To just chill out on a weekend day. Her voice is.
Yeah, it's like
melted butter.
Exactly. I was going to say it's like butter.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, she's something else.
Yeah. And I don't know who does her writing. I guess it's her.
Well, so that I was going to tell you, that first big hit that don't know why.
Probably written for her, I'm guessing.
No, she wrote it with this dude Jesse, who had never gotten a cut on a record ever, and we had the same attorney, and like that dude's life completely changed.
Good for him.
Yeah, I mean, it was just they were just like, dude, go buy a house. Everything is different now. Because that song got Grammy nominated as Song of the Year. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah, it gives me goosebumps to see you guys succeed. That's why my job was so cool in L.A., because you'd see guys who just got signed and you're working their records, and Black Crowes, one of them. One of my crown jewel moments was we worked with them to get them on stations, and I remember that album coming into the music meeting. We used to get CDs that had nothing written on them.
Right.
Come into our music meetings, because I heard like. The Cult album a year before it came out. I heard all this stuff a year before it came. I actually heard the Cult record with Rick Rubin and my boss driving to see a Kings game.
What?
And he had it with him.
Did Rick Rubin do that Electric record?
Electric, yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
God, those drum sounds are so good.
Yeah, and it's so filthy.
It's just so good.
Yeah, why they didn't have him do them all after that, I have no idea, but... although the Bob Rock stuff was pretty good.
The Firewoman thing.
That was, I think that was the next record that came out.
Sonic Temple. Yeah.
Sonic Temple, yeah.
Yeah. That had to have been crazy, though, sitting in a music meeting or whatever, and like at the time, hair metal is kind of still king, right? And then you've got this whole other world of like whatever pop is at the time, and like to me, both of those bands, the Black Crowes and the Cult, really, really stood out as just being rock bands.
Yeah, I mean, they were there. They sort of were off in a lane by themselves, and it's like when we got them as program directors, we were like, oh God, yes,
Yeah.
Especially in Jacksonville, that thrives on the dirty.
They love the rock, right?
I mean, AC/DC broke in Jacksonville. A lot of people don't know that.
No.
A High Voltage. I went and saw AC/DC when High Voltage came out because both stations were playing it in Jacksonville. I was like 17, 18 years old. And we went and saw them at the Jacksonville Coliseum, and it was sold out because they were getting tons of airplay. We were going surfing in the morning and hearing, Live Wire and, Long Way to the Top and all these great fucking songs.
Yeah.
And so we got a ticket to go see them, and it was phenomenal. And then found out they were playing in Savannah the next night, which is just an hour and a half away. So we got in the car and went up there, hoping we could get a ticket and get in. And they were at a club that held about 200 people. It was like half capacity.
Wow.
And we ended up doing shots with Bon Scott and Malcolm Young.
Nice.
Who wasn't even a dressing room. They were just off to the side.
Yeah, totally.
And the night before, they had 18,000 people, and then no airplay in that town. Mm-hmm. That's why radio was so fucking cool to me.
I got to live that. I actually got to live that life. So you asked me about like the transitions and all of that stuff. We got to do that because even in early 2003, you would go to certain towns, and if you were on the radio, again, sold out show, or you're doing a radio show and there's 12, 13, 14,000 people there or whatever, and then the next night, it's like 50 people in a bar, and no, like you said, no dressing. We were still in a van back then. That's a weird time to live in, and I'm sure for them, I mean, gosh, that was ages before,
How cool is it though to make something, because I found you by meeting you.
Yeah.
I didn't know much about Bowling for Soup until you came in, and I immediately got the record and and downloaded it and everything else because I'd never heard 1985 before for some reason or another.
Well, we would have been on your stations for a while with "Girl All the Bad Guys Want," but then that song went to pop.
Yeah.
And
this is a great song, by the way.
And that 1985, though, would have been the same thing, because that's the thing about bands like us. When you're a rock band and you cross over to pop, it's hard to come back. Like, rock stations usually will not ask you don't get back. There's a few anomalies out there like Seether and bands like that have a crossover that it's just like one song. For some reason, bands like us and Simple Plan, All American Rejects, you start out on rock radio. Once we all went pop, we're not getting asked back.
Yeah, and it's a shame because like I said, on the app now, you play like Addicted by Simple Plan.
Yeah.
Next to any rock record, it sounds fucking great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I think the same is, I think all of our genre, I think Newfound Glory and Sum 41 and Bowling for Soup and, again, Simple Plan.
See, those are all bands a guy my age shouldn't love, but it's like they're like my favorite bands.
But that's what it should be, though. You should be able to listen to that stuff and then Lit, and then and who's, by the way, if you haven't heard their country stuff, I don't know if you're a big country guy, but check out the band Lit.
Lit has country stuff.
They have a country album. And
get the fuck out of here!
It's awesome. And
I love Lit.
Yeah, it's great. So now when they do their concerts, they do the first half in country. They do the first half as country stuff.
That's so fucking cool.
And then they play like Ziploc and My Own Worst Enemy and all that shit.
Oh,
after.
Man. I mean, those songs are, My Worst Enemy, songs like, just fucking great songs.
So those dudes are good friends of mine, and I told them to their face, I think Ziploc, if I could get another chance, put it in a Ziploc bag. I'm like, that song is perfect. It's just a perfectly written song. There's not a lot of those.
No.
You hear them every once in a while. You're like, Mr. Jones by Counting Crows. That's a perfect song.
Perfect song.
Imagine by John Lennon. Obviously, it's a perfect song. I'm like, I put Ziploc by Lit in that category. I'm like, that's how perfect that song is.
Yep.
But yeah, they're...
Highway to Hell. Perfect song.
Highway to Hell's a perfect song.
Perfect song.
You're right.
3.5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Says all it needs to say.
Want to just get in there and get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you do.
I get in arguments with people about the Bon Scott, Brian Johnson, AC/DC thing, and to me, it's two different bands. Because the singer's so powerful in that band that it has to be. So to me, it's like AC/DC 2, AC/DC 1.
That's the reason why there should never be the Van Halen argument. It's the same thing. Because the David Lee Roth stuff, is so different because David Lee Roth wasn't into like song structure. Like even if you like look at like Panama, if you try to sing that song at karaoke, good luck because there's no real form to it until you get to the chorus. Whereas Sammy Hagar is he's a meat and potatoes guy. They started writing,
but a songwriting machine
and a insane voice and quite a front man.
And the fact he took a back seat as a guitar player to Ronnie Montrose, which by the way, it may be one of the greatest rock records ever made.
Which one?
The Montrose album.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Beginning to end, just Rock Candy and Rock the Nation, and
he's been in so many of those kind of power. But what was the HGASA or something like that? Hagar. Something.
Oh yeah. I mean that was very short lived.
Yeah, but he's been in a bunch of that kind of shit.
Yeah, he just kind of does what he wants. I mean, his solo stuff, he has enough on his own solo wise.
You would think I Can't Drive 55 probably will make him money. Well, no, not probably. It will make him money till he dies.
Yeah, I mean, he had great solo stuff before that. He had I'll Fall in Love Again, which was a great song, and Only One Way to Rock.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, those were out before Can't Drive 55, and
that's the shit my brother listened to in his Trans Am with the T-tops off. Just it was like that. Yeah,
I was trying to think of the guy's name that resurrected all those careers. Because of video. He was with Geffen. I can't remember the guy's name. But he pretty much got Sammy and a few others and, put I Can't Drive 55 to video and MTV and everything and pretty much restarted his career all over again.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think I even know that story.
What's the guy's name, man? I mean, he did it for like 10 or 15 people.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's like all these guys out there that didn't really know they should make videos yet.
Yeah.
Again, it was what a different world.
Because the vibe for Sammy would be make a record, go on the road, make some money, and then go back to Northern California and hang out. It was MO for like 15 years.
Right.
And then God, I can't believe I can't think of the guy's name.
How old is Sammy now? Like that?
70.
He's 70 years old. Yeah. He can still sing that shit.
Yeah, and he looks fucking great.
Yeah, he does.
I don't know who like does his hair and all that. Because it's gray. It's got to be.
Gotta be.
Yeah, but I saw him in Vegas about a year or so ago. He had like Satriani in the band and had Mellencamp's drummer.
Kenny Arnold?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's like my favorite drummer.
Yeah. And he's a beast.
Dude, I got to see that guy I went to the NAMM festival, which is all the music gear nerds basically go to this convention for 3 days in Anaheim. And but all stars just walk around or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I have another good story about that place. But anyway, I'm walking down this. I'm walking down, and just behind this glass wall is just Kenny, just doing like a drum but to music. And it was the coolest thing I ever saw.
He hits drum. He like Taylor Hawkins. There's guys that hit the drums with purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Butch Walker produced that second Avril Lavigne record, and they got Kenny Aronoff to come in and play.
Yeah.
And he walked in, played the record, and walked out in 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Like a record.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, he's a total pro. I mean, there's so many people that have used. I mean, I think Alanis used him.
Oh yeah. But then Taylor Hawkins was her drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Played at Trees here in Dallas.
Yeah, he is he's a freak of nature, man. Because going to watch that show when they were just here in Dallas, the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Close to a 3-hour show. Mm-hmm. And I mean the physical shape you have to be in,
absolutely,
to play those songs. Because there was a stretch there where they were playing, the My Heroes and Monkey Wrench, all the stuff that's pretty physical in nature. They did it like all in a row for like 25 minutes. I was just like.
And he puts on yeah. And like you said, he's putting on a show. Like he's there's a lot of body movement and stuff like that, which is physically insane.
Yeah, I was telling my daughter, I said, remember this. This is a band in their zenith. They have worked 24 years to get to this.
Right.
This is as good as they're ever going to be, because now they're going to start aging, and this tour is probably, if they do another record, another tour like this, I'll be surprised. And they're certainly capable of it.
Right.
But this was a lengthy tour, which kind of tells me, they're going to be dormant for a while, and probably not going to be what they were. When they, I may be wrong. I mean,
you just never know.
I'm just kind of looking at the odds and their age. They're into their 50s now and stuff like that.
But you're a Stones guy. Do you still go watch them? And how do you feel like those shows are? But they're not really putting out the music, I guess. That's that's what you're saying. You're saying,
I mean, I haven't liked the Stones live since '81.
Okay, see, we're the same. I think there is a time where, it just isn't as. It's not again, I am in this industry because of Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train. 100%. But I don't really need to see him. I don't need to. And my favorite artist of all time is Willie Nelson. I've seen him 10 times. It just makes me sad seeing him now.
Yeah, I mean, there's some guys that pull it off. Sammy's one of them.
Yeah.
Sammy pulls it off still. But as far as people that are as good now as they were in the heyday, like Aerosmith and stuff like that.
Right. And even that fucker falls off the stage and shit.
Yeah. Metallica, they're at their zenith right now. When I went and saw them at Orion Fest, it's like, it can't get any better than this.
Right.
I mean, there was no drop off from what I saw 10 years earlier.
That's an interesting thing to say and see, because they've been through so much, as a band, and just the roller coaster of just them. Yeah,
I was so fascinated when with Saint Anger. Yeah. And the documentary they did with that,
right,
where James was cleaning up and going through his stuff and wasn't even sure he wanted to be in the band anymore.
Right.
And the documentary focusing on the guys being left out on, waiting on his decision and getting frustrated over it.
Right.
It's one of the best looks inside a band I've ever seen.
They had to go to therapy together, right? They had to go.
They did go together, but until James went off by himself for 6 months, they weren't making any progress. And the douchebag they had as the therapist was, to me, inhibiting any progress. I mean, this guy was just an ass clown as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
And I think Lars felt the same way, because he kind of called the guy on his bullshit in the end and just said, I think you've become the only problem we have left at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you want this to go on forever and ever. I think we're ready to move forward. And he is, now you're here doing this and you don't want it to.
Interesting.
And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's a hell of an accusation.
Hell yeah, it is.
Because the guy did pry a lot of shit out of him, but I agreed with his assessment that he went from being the fixer to the problem, somewhere. And good for Lars and Kirk for spotting it and just getting rid of the guy, because obviously they've been fine.
Was there not a bass player involved? So was this between Jason and Robert, or
they had just brought Jason had left. As a matter of fact, there's a part of the documentary where they go see his new band play, and they kind of walk out in the middle of it like it was too painful or too something. They just, they didn't even go back and, they went back to say hello to him, and he didn't come out.
Really?
So there was a lot of bad feelings there and stuff like that.
Right.
Which, I don't know if those ever got fixed or not. But, the whole thing was fascinating, because, here's one of the biggest bands in the world.
Yeah.
And you're watching their literally fall apart right in front of you, and you don't want it to. Cliff Bernstein was a genius for putting that together. I mean the attention the band got on that, not just from fans, but from other bands,
right?
That were like, oh shit, I don't know if I would have done that.
I think it's interesting to just let people in sometimes, because that's the big thing that you have to try. That's the one thing that social media has allowed me to do is just, to just express the fact that we're just people. I mean, like, it's just, everybody's just a person, and you get, there's just shit going on in everybody's life. I mean, you look at, Demi Lovato right now. I mean, she's just a person. She's got demons like anybody else. She does. Talk about being on top of the fucking world. She's on top of the world now for the second time. And again, there's just shit that goes on in people's lives, and it's hard, So I've started talking a lot about my anxiety and depression and things like that online. At first it was tough to even say anything about it because I didn't want to be like, oh, the funny guy got fat, and now he's going to blame it on depression and blah blah blah. But I haven't gotten any of that. Everything that I'm getting is like, holy shit, thank you for saying something. Like, it's just nice that people are putting it out there. Something has to go somewhere when you go through something like that. It's kind of funny. The last time I saw you guys, that you came in as a band, I kind of sensed a tension, between the two of you. Oh, me and Eric? Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if it was towards each other or just towards where the band was or whatever. Obviously, you're still together now, so it got worked out, whatever it was. But I definitely picked up on it, and I think he even addressed it a little bit, that he was kind of like, he had his kids or something like that. And well, his child is older, and like out of but I'm the one that, I mean, we're talking like 8 or 9 years ago. Okay, so yeah. Oh, okay. At that point, it was a little bit wacky. He was living in South Carolina and trying to fly back and forth, and all of that. And I was dealing with. I was already probably in. I was already in counseling with my ex. I had 2 kids at home and all of that. And what we did was. If there was any tension that morning, it was probably something just silly. I mean, maybe he was late, or it wasn't heavy. It wasn't heavy, and it's like Terry and I go through those things. I mean, people think we hang out all the time and do everything together. We don't. We never have. We're 2 totally different people. I think that's smart, and but we do. So in Bowling for, like, Gary and I are pretty much as best of friends as you can be, and we're together all the time. Chris likes to keep by himself, and Eric also likes to do his own thing. But for us, what we did was we got to a point where, and it was me, and I was just like, guys, I'm going through this time. I got to figure out what's going on with me. I'm going through a divorce. At that point, I hadn't been diagnosed as depressed yet. I was already dealing with the anxiety, but I'm just like, man, I can't. I gotta slow down. And so we did. We tapped the brakes in 2013, took like a solid year off touring and didn't do anything internationally at all. And man, when we came back, we were like a ball of fire, and we still are. Like, we're just, everything we do is 100%. We're all clicking on all cylinders. Our audiences now, I mean, because 1985 and Phineas and Ferb both came out in 2005, our audience now, we're selling out everywhere we go because all those kids are in college now, and it's just, we did the right thing. Instead of letting it implode on itself, instead of letting everything come to a head and me start to resent them and resent the band and us start to tear each other apart. And not that everybody else hasn't had their own shit going on, but mine was, guys, like, my life's kind of falling apart here, and I was honest about it. And we took that break. As was I. Best thing we ever did. It was, and again, it's just, and you know what? Everybody kind of got their shit together at the same time, and so it's good now. Yeah, I mean, you find out things about people. It's like Terry and I kind of had this, thing going on the air where we were like taking shots at each other and stuff like that. It's like we, at this point are a radio show for 10, 15 years. Yeah, and. When I went through my divorce and my stuff, he was rock fucking solid. Yeah, I mean, he was money. I will always appreciate the fact that he put whatever differences he had with me aside and attended to somebody that was. That needed a friend, needed somebody to get it. I had and my I had a lot of shit going on at the same time. I was in another band, and that band didn't work out, and there was like this insane bad blood that happened between the other guy and I'd never had that before. I've never had an enemy before, and so that was happening at the same time. And Gary, my friend Gary from Bowling for Soup, and then my friend Linus. I mean, it just from both directions, just like you said, man, they were just there. And they just listened, and like if Gary hadn't heard from me in a couple of days, he was just like, "Okay, I'm meeting you at Chili's in an hour," and you need that, man. You got to have that.
Yeah, I mean, I was getting up in the middle of radio shows, having like anxiety and panic attacks, and having to like go outside.
Yeah,
because I felt like I was just being closed in on, and he never called me out on it, like ever.
I could get up in the morning, get my kids to school, feed my dogs. Mm-hmm. I'd get home, fetal position in the bed till it was time to get the kids. Go get the kids, get through the night, fetal position on the bed, or get as drunk as I possibly could so I could sleep.
Right.
And then repeat. And I did that for a couple years.
Yeah. I was on medication and stuff like that. So I was here, but I wasn't here.
Do you got that stuff figured out now? Your anxiety?
Oh yeah.
Are you still taking medication?
I mean, I have it prescribed. I mean, at the time I had a lot of it prescribed. Now I have like 5 pills a month. So in case I have a panic attack.
Okay, so I take a depression med every day and an anxiety med every day, as low a dose as you can, and then I have that prescription that if I need it, it's there. But a 30-day supply of the Xanax basically lasts me 6 months.
Yeah, I mean that's basically it. I was taking that pretty regular because it was preventing panic attacks.
Yeah,
it was just like I knew I was going to have them.
Knew we were going to have one.
Yeah,
anyway.
I mean, I'm dealing with all this stuff I'd never dealt with before: divorce and bankruptcy and financial problems, and making sure my kid's okay.
Yep.
And this affects her as little as possible, and it was just absolutely overwhelming, and not. I'm in a new relationship, and we
have the same story.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
My doctor said to me, I go through a divorce. I'm in my ex and I co-parent fine, and everything's great now. But for 2 years, we didn't agree on anything. We were in and out of court. I got into a new relationship. I moved from Highland Village to Prosper. My band took a year off, whatever. So I'm sitting there and explaining this to my doctor. He goes, Jaret, any one of these things is enough to send somebody into an anxiety-ridden, fueled, like, panic attack, montage. He goes, you've got all of it. So, like, give yourself a break. Like, it's okay. Because my big thing was I've never liked drugs. I didn't want to take pills. I as much as I love my beer, I do not want, if I have a headache, it takes a while to convince me to take Advil. I don't like it.
Well, I mean, Xanax broke up my marriage, in my opinion. Oops, sorry about that. It broke up my marriage, in my opinion. The abuse of that stuff and other things that came with it. That not from me, just witnessing it. I'd had enough of it. And the first thing when I get out of my marriage is I get prescribed
you get put on Xanax,
and I'm like, do you have anything else, like anything, she's like, no, this is
what this does.
When taken properly, it's fine.
Exactly. If you're taking a small dose to get you through the day or to get through an airline flight or whatever, that's it. It's like when you're popping one in the morning and another one at noon and another one at night or whatever, then you're pouring a fucking fifth of booze on top of it.
Yeah, which is what I just got away from.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be that person, but I didn't want to go anywhere without having one of those near me.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. It's a crazy thing to have gone through, and then as you look back upon it, it's almost like this whole this window of time where you're just like, you sort of look at it like it's just this one object, like, oh, this is during that time where I was going through this bullshit, and for me, it took a few years to get the medication right. It took it took therapy, all of that stuff, and you know me well enough to know, like, I'm the funny guy. Like, that's what I do. Like, when I speak to, so like I was going on stage and like being hilarious and then just being absolutely miserable. And, and I think, having friends or at least acquaintances or whatever that go through this and don't make it, like when Chester passed away or whatever, like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I've had numerous conversations with that guy. I peed next to him at the Kerrang Awards. You know what I mean? Like, it's a fucking epidemic.
I saw him on Carpool Karaoke with Ken
James Corden.
But what's the guy's name that was in Hangover? The Asian guy, Ken.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. They were having such a great time because Ken's like a huge Linkin Park fan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And this is 5 days. This was filmed before he committed suicide.
Yeah.
And he looked like he was having the best time. Mm-hmm. Looked like he was fine. And you're sitting there watching it. I literally had to turn it off because I'm like, oh my God, 5 days later.
Yeah.
And the two guys in the back seat, you could tell they got along as a band, that they were all
bros, yeah.
They were all bros and everything, and, they're all laughing at each other's stuff. You could tell they weren't sick of each other and all that, and I'm just watching them in the back seat going, man, you guys have no idea what's about to happen to you. I can't
even imagine that.
Yeah, it was just really hard to watch. It's on iTunes. If you ever have the stomach for it, it lets you realize how precious something is until it's gone.
Once all that shit started happening, it was much easier for me to just go, okay, fuck it, I'll a friend of mine did a blog. He does a blog about depression and anxiety. It's just like, fuck it, I'll answer all the questions openly and honestly. And it's just like, look, I always preface, and even this interview, like, I'll preface it, like, I'm not asking anybody to feel sorry for me. I'm not, again, like, your story is your story, and if you don't believe in the whole mental illness thing, you really should probably listen to some people that have had it, because on my podcast, on Jaret Goes to the Movies, my co-host Rich we don't agree on anything. Same as you and Lex, we not you and Terry, as far as like we don't hang out or anything like that. Obviously, I know you guys are buds, and me and Rich are fine. But
we are in a certain way. It's like as far as the show goes, we talk about ideas. Our sense of humor is pretty in line, and all that stuff. And I'm kind of, not that he's not capable of it. He just doesn't like it. I kind of handle the mundane business shit of the show. He handles creative stuff and preparing shows and stuff like that. We all have like our routine we go through to make this happen every day. But there were days where the thought of talking to somebody on the phone about some piece of business or whatever, I was just dreading the shit out of it.
I let so many things go. I cost our band a lot of money and myself. So and we've talked about the financial aspect of things, when you go through a divorce and custody and all of that. But to add to that, not being able to work or not, like you said, like I was exactly the same way. It's like there's a business call, I'd put it off, and then it would go away. Or opportunities to do this, or just letting the Bowling for Soup merch store slip through my fingers and just not even pay attention to it for a year, things like that. You're right. Sometimes sometimes preparing yourself to talk to a friend on the phone just seems like it seems like I just can't do that.
How many times did you look at your phone and it's somebody you adore and love, and you just, I can't do 20 minutes
all
of
the
this.
time. All the time. Constantly, actually. Like I just, and then I would text like, hey, call you later, and I just wouldn't. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I'll feel better later, and I'll give that person a call, and it would never happen.
Same here. But it turns out you don't feel better later.
You don't. No.
It got to the point where I have people to take care of, including the people I work with, and I just had to just get my shit together. And, over time, I kind of got back to being myself. The problems didn't go away. I guess I just got used to them being there, and it was just the new set of circumstances.
This is the way life is now. Same for me. It's like the band and the crew depend on me for their livelihood, and if I'm not at least 75%, then they don't pay rent.
Yeah,
and so it took. It took some of that, and then it took, again, like I said, I'm married to my best friend, and she was just awesome through everything, and she's just absolutely just the greatest thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, the sad part for me, because I don't think she'll ever get past it. She doesn't say anything. I can just tell that, Lisa's seeing the side of me before all that happened, because, I met her while I was still married, even though, I had already had a conversation with my wife that, the stuff you're doing is, you're not going to impede me living life.
Right.
So don't be surprised.
Right.
So I had met her, and, it changed my life. I was like happy again. And, I realized I can be in a relationship with somebody and be, happy. And, I met the chick I should have met all along. And, and then all this hit, the realities of it hit, the divorce, the court dates, the financial situation going from great to, in debt.
Yeah.
And, my child, kind of being put in the middle of this unwillingly, all this stuff starting to get to you, so unfortunately the last person she got to see was that person, and, she had gone back to Oklahoma a couple of times because I wasn't the guy she met.
Right.
She didn't know who this guy was. I didn't know who this guy was.
Sure.
So, she ultimately was comfortable with me to a point where, she came back, she loves me, all that stuff, but there's still that part of me that thinks, that's what she sees now. She got to see something she shouldn't have seen.
Right.
Yeah. And that makes me sad.
I bet she doesn't feel like that. And you know what? Maybe you guys should just go to like a tune-up counseling thing and just like go for a couples thing. And if that's out there, she gets it out, and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, she got it out. I mean, she articulated it. She's extremely. She's a country girl. She's extremely honest.
Yeah.
And to the point sometimes where you wish she wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. She just blurts it out, and you're left to deal with it. But I now know there's a part of her that's disappointed. Whether I fix that or not,
right?
Still remains to be seen. But that saddens me.
I think that's a time thing.
Because I get angry that the person I left had something to do with that.
Yeah.
You're still in my fucking business.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately that never goes away.
Yeah.
I mean, because you still you still have the wacky dreams and shit. Mm-hmm. It just musters it all back up.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You have dreams about things, like you wake up and you're like, oh, like you have the dream. I have this dream, and I'm open with this with my wife, where I'm like, I get back with my ex or whatever, and then I wake up and I'm like, oh shit, why did I do that? I don't want to do that, kind of thing.
I know.
And then, but you can't, but then, she's just like, oh, I have those dreams about like my high school boyfriend. And I'm like, oh, okay, well then we're good. I think one of the things that you hit on too, I think one of the hardest things for me was during all of that, keeping the kids out of it and just wanting to just sit them down and just go, here's everything that's going on and everything that's being said and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't do that, and I'm glad I didn't, and I think at the end of the day, you know what, we all made it out alive and everybody's happy and, now, but that was really, really hard. some of the times whenever I was, on my way to court or whatever, and drop the kids off to at school and just like, okay, guys, I'll see you after school, and then I go to this thing where it's just the most miserable day of my life.
Yeah,
and
the
then,
vibe is just heavy and horrible. And,
good Lord.
You're across the table from this person that you thought you knew.
And you don't.
And you don't.
And they're thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean... Yeah.
Although to me it was unfair she thinks the same thing because I didn't change anything.
Right. I do that thing too. And I agree. I think I'm still the same person, and then a lot of things changed and, but at the same time, like I have to go back. So if I'm being fair about the situation, I have to go back to, okay, starting when we met in 1998, sometimes I was gone for 6 months out of the year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I at least have to put that back into like her corner of shit when it talks about. So like I can't really blame anybody for why it didn't work out. I just hate all the shit that went down after.
Yeah.
That's the hard part for me, is just all of the back and forth and establishing this and being mad, at me for having a girlfriend or yada yada, which I didn't do that stuff, like I don't care. Like I always would rather her have someone in her life because it got her out of my shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, my situation was I wasn't looking for anything. It found me.
Yeah.
Because, over the course of Lex and Terry, the first 20 years she and I were together, I mean, chicks would throw themselves at you, and I was a happily married guy, Even when I wasn't happily married, I was just like, I don't need the aggravation of... Sure. I just didn't like the chick enough to upset...
blow it, yeah.
And then Lisa came along, and it's... a once in a lifetime. I mean, that's truly the feeling I had about her was... there's not going to be somebody like this, so you better act on it.
You got to jump on that.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. So, so it started, and, I even at one point, at her request, tried to fix it and, said, hey, if you can clean all this up and everything, I'm yours till the end.
Did you go to therapy and shit?
She wouldn't do it.
Okay.
She wanted me to do it.
Oh, you needed to go to therapy.
I need to do it.
You needed to go fix it. Okay, we did. Me and the ex did counseling for a couple years, and we did individual and couples and all of that, and it was obvious that, and even I think the ex would say this. It was pretty obvious that the therapist was kind of on my side all the time, because. So I think that created even more resentment.
And she even said to my face, she goes, you're really good at getting people, to see your side of things. She goes, so I don't think a therapist would be any different.
That's a fear of knowing that she's wrong.
And I just went, they're trained to not let people do that to them.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah, that's just, again, that's people her not wanting to go. Yeah. Her saying that they're just going to think you're right. And all that
I knew what it was.
Yeah, it's just her knowing that she's the one that's in the wrong.
She's like, you need to go and tell them, about getting attention all the time and being a radio person, because that's the real problem here. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, well, that's also paying for this house.
Yeah.
And this and this, and that's the catch-22.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing, is that, yes, I'll agree that my band was very instrumental in breaking up that relationship. Mm-hmm. But that band is still writing checks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and sorry, but that's what you signed up for.
Yeah, you were already doing that, right?
I mean, I said, I was in radio when you met me. Mm-hmm. You were completely aware of my goals, even though this went off on a path even I didn't expect it to, because I expected to be in management and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. even though it went in this direction, it doesn't change. This is my occupation.
Right.
And I put the same effort into it as I would the other. I'd still be coming home, after 10-hour days or 12-hour days. None of that would change.
Right.
Because I want whatever I'm doing to be the best it can be.
Sure.
So, I didn't apologize for it, like, ever. I just wouldn't do it because that wasn't the problem.
Right.
The problem was, you need to do something to occupy your time. You need to find a passion, and you are at the point with Samantha being old enough to enhance your life and do something that makes you gratified and happy.
Because when they sit around and stew,
it's bad.
They stew because you're out being happy.
Yeah.
And your happiness, part of your happiness is your job and making sure that everything's going the way that it needs to be. And, that's frustrating.
And she seemed like really good at like real estate type stuff and things. I said, let's, get your broker's license.
Yeah.
Let's make the family some money, through you.
The timing would have been great.
Yeah. And she was, it would sound good to her for a day or two, and then it would just kind of go away.
Yeah.
I didn't know where her head was at with that, but, this is a extremely capable, smart woman.
Right.
Which was one of the things I was drawn to with her,
Sure.
Was she was, always like a top biller in sales and, she had nice things at 20 years old. She had her own house, her car paid for, this is, somebody who is completely adept at being filthy rich.
And then you guys had the baby and she didn't work for a while and then.
Well, her dad passed away and we had the baby like all in the same, he was like everything to her.
Damn.
I think that had something to do with, with things, because he was definitely her role model, her, her person, so I think that was pretty damaging. And, and then the baby came along, which, she did an amazing job raising her, until things started complicating, like into her teens.
Right.
But, up until that point, I'll say it to anybody, a kid couldn't be raised any better.
Right. And then the teenage girl and mom drama that's harder on the mom.
Yeah, well, my daughter, we found out was a very talented rider in equestrian, like up on a national level,
right?
Within a couple of years, so it was high-end horse shows, and you're competing against, Selleck and Springsteen's kid and shit like that.
No shit.
And she was killing it.
Wow.
And through the divorce and stuff, I'm like, I can't take this away from her because, she had just won Zone 7 and she had a chance to win on national level. Yet the money to pay for that was not there. So it had to come from somewhere else, which is why I'm still in debt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because to take that away from her at that point would have been a much bigger problem.
Yeah, you do what you can. I mean, again, I'm financially, it's difficult, and
yeah. I mean, even the IRS person I'm talking to at the time goes, that's. I can't say I wouldn't have done the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
I went, but that being said, I went, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know what the rest of that is.
I got you. Yeah. You understand, but you're still coming after me.
Yeah.
with the fucking, with the hounds.
With a vengeance.
Exactly. You've got a trident and 6 dogs.
Actually, I gotta say, they've been pretty cool.
Yeah, good.
And as understanding as an agency like that can possibly be.
Sure.
But
they've had to become more sympathetic, because so many people are fucked and everybody hates them. So they're, what are you going to do? Yeah,
I know people that work for them. I know they've had seminars on like suicide rates going up and things like that, and having to work with people, especially after 2008. That still has ramifications.
Yeah.